Don't get scared now, just because millions of people are watching.
As I dart off camera. Yeah.
All right, I believe we're live. We will find out after 20 seconds of delay when I see us actually moving. I see the comments popping up.
Yeah.
All right, so
I believe we're live, yes.
Looks like we're live. I have the most professional beginnings to my videos. I think I'm live. Let me wait and see.
We think we're live, so we're just going to babble at a screen for about 15 minutes and hope you hear
it. All right, and yes, I see us moving. We are, in fact, live. All right, hey, how's it going, everyone? Remember, the camera's up here, not down here. It's too much stuff to look at up here.
Up here? Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
All right, everyone, I'm live here with Kane. If you didn't see the live stream from yesterday, Kane was one of my many bunkmates when I was locked up, but 2.5 years bunkmates with this guy, and so it was cool. He was visiting
after years of therapy.
Yeah,
I'm okay now.
Wasn't a lot of planning ahead of time. We just kept talking about stories from back when we were locked up, and I was like, yesterday I was like, hey, let's just go live and talk about stuff there. Anywho. Yesterday, towards the end of the live stream yesterday, I mentioned that there is an issue, which if we had time, we might have gone into it. But I mentioned that there's this other issue, namely, you got locked back up. Yeah. So you become a Christian when you're locked up, and then you get out, and then you get locked back up. And that's like
probably 7 years.
Yeah.
And got locked back up.
And that's like probably half of, the Christians I knew best in prison got locked back up. And I got locked back up not because I could have gotten locked back up, not because I turned back to life like I was before I became a Christian, but I just could have done something stupid, right? There were times when I would run my mouth to someone and could have ended up getting, even when I was on parole, I just, I gotten out of prison and stuff like that, and I would shoot my mouth off at people. And fortunately, it never got me into trouble. But I remember walking away thinking, what the heck was I thinking, right? I'm sitting there talking trash to those 7 dudes. And if I ended up getting in a fight with them, what happens? Either I beat up 7 dudes and I go back to jail, or they beat me up and what did I accomplish?
Still go to jail.
Yeah, probably, right? It's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing fighting with these guys? And turns out you started it and stuff. So anyway,
I came from the handshake age and stuff where you fought and then you bought each other a beer and it was done. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not like that.
Not like that. Not like that anymore. So anyway, I brought that up at the end of the last live stream and asked how many people would like to see a discussion on that. And pretty much everyone I saw said yes. So if you've ever wondered basically why people get locked up and they have some sort of conversion experience and then they get out and end up getting back in trouble, the common perception is they were faking. And I would argue, of course, you can be faking. But
it's a possibility, but
I would argue it's usually not the case. It's I would say, and we'll get into this much later. I would say it's actually because of special circumstances that you're in prison, which are actually conducive to spiritual development, and then the things that are actually helping you in certain ways, they get stripped away when you get out and you're in a totally different environment, and changes everything. If you're not prepared for it, then you end up making some mistakes. So anyway, most of the time tonight, up until the end, when I talk about my perspective on some of these issues, most of the time is going to be Kane talking. So this is Kane. We mentioned yesterday,
and him picking on me as I talk. So
we just mentioned,
we'll make it entertaining. Trust me.
Yesterday we mentioned that he just had surgery. And so you may not even notice that he doesn't sound exactly like he normally sounds.
Like all this through here is very painful.
Yeah, so he's kind of messed up. Plus, there was a kind of family emergency as we were live streaming.
Actually, let me kind of introduce that in. We were in the middle of the live stream last night, and I had a very close family member have a bad accident, and I certainly asked for prayers, for them. I don't want to give any more information about that. I just put it. I would greatly appreciate your prayers. Dealing with that all day. I almost went back home, stuff, but this was more important. Mm-hmm. I felt this was something that needed to be heard, needed to be said. for some reason, one of the comments are resonating in my mind from last night was basically, you did the crime, you're a criminal, now you're crying about it, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
About it?
Well, no, I mean, like making a video, trying to make ourselves sound like nice guys because we were witnessing to people, so now we're all suddenly we're good, because we're Christian.
We are.
Yeah, well, it kind of is that simple,
You got to ignore the trolls, man. Some people, they just say the nastiest thing they can to get attention.
I just wanted to address that directly, and stuff. I mean, just from the fact that, there's situational things, so things happen sometimes way beyond our expectations or way beyond, some stuff we don't even anticipate, and things that we know about, and we still keep doing the dumb same stuff over and over again. I mean, what's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over again,
expecting a different result. Exactly. And I believe that just kind of segue into it, that was one of my biggest problems. I actually kind of got a little arrogant in my salvation, I believe. I think maybe I interjected a little bit more of me into it towards the end, and stuff, rather than towards God. And I think that's where the problem started. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give like kind of a really like sort of like brief history of time sort of thing in Cain's life, I guess. So you kind of get an idea of, how I ended up, in the situation that I did. Yeah. I mean, basically and stuff, I grew up, I didn't have the best of childhoods. I mean, most people didn't have great childhood, so I mean that's no excuse. I'm not using that as an excuse or anything.
I'm grinning right now because you would tell me stories about your screwed up childhood, right?
Yeah, well,
you tell me stories about like your dad telling you to move a pile of blocks from one side.
Yeah, you'd have me move a pile of bricks that was about up to here on me. Keep in mind, I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, and he would make me work till 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd have me move all the bricks from one side of the house to the other. And then he said, is that where I told you to put that pile of bricks? That pile of bricks belongs on the other side of the house. And he would turn the spotlights on outside, and I would be out there sometimes at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and got a whooping. Yeah. So I got the full.
It was just funny to me because he would think of all these funny. Your dad would think of all these funny things to do that I didn't think of, and I think they were funny. Anyway,
he was quite inventive.
Yeah, so we were bunkmates, and he'd be telling me about all this like these ridiculous punishments and stuff like that. But then Cain is a multi-instrumentalist, right? You can play. I've seen you play almost every instrument anyone's put in your hand. So I've seen you play
anything with strings on, basically.
Bass and guitar, violin,
viola,
those
cello,
are the main ones. Yeah.
Upright
I've
bass.
even seen you play drums back in the day.
Oh yeah, I played drums.
Yeah. And like phenomenally well. Right, could be in a ton of bands playing different instruments and stuff like that. But what was funny is because you played the violin. I don't know if you remember this, but me and Doan would be sitting there, and I knew your background, and I'd be going, "Man, Doan, can you imagine what Cain's childhood was like with his violin lessons?" And we'd start doing imitation. I'd go, "Oh, Philip, darling." You'll come for you.
Well, thanks for revealing my first name there, buddy. But, well, guys, there you go. You know my full name now. But I'm just kidding.
Come for your violin lessons, dear. Oh, no, Mumsy, no. Mumsy, please don't make me. And me and Doan would sit there just... That
was the ironic thing about my parents. Education was paramount to them as far as any kind of, like... I don't know how to explain it. Their only focus was education or die was basically my mantra when I was growing up and stuff. They wanted me to become whatever they wanted me, a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. And I mean, that wasn't me. I was a musician and I'm an artist, I mean, that's where, that's my talents and my skills.
What's crazy is like, if you look at, like Michael Jackson or something like that. I mean, his dad was basically torturing the Jackson Five to get him. And it's like they only achieve that success because he's putting them through all that, and yet that's how And yet it's just it was messing them up.
Well, unfortunate greatness on the level of torture. A lot of pain.
It's this weird situation of like they ended up hating the guy, and yet they had the success from him. And so, how do you get to the point where you can say, gosh, I wish they'd done things differently, but I can acknowledge what I got out of it and some of the success I got out of it. So anyway, that was just a little side side.
I mean, however, and I want to make this also clear to everybody. So again, I don't blame anybody but myself for the situations I've gotten myself into, stuff. As far as going to jail, yeah, I deserved it. I did something that was against the law, so I explained all that last night. I'd rather not go through everything again, stuff. But they made me mandatory my sentence. And what that means is they made me do the full amount sans whatever good time that I had earned, and I had lost a little bit of time along the way, but they made me do the full distance, for it.
Me too.
Yeah,
and like I think 2 or 3 of the times I just even refused to go. Like,
you actually refused to go to your parole hearings.
Yeah, I know. I refused to go to my parole hearings until the very last one when I knew I'd be,
I won't tell you how my last one went. That's it's not good for this channel.
Yeah,
I told them.
I went to my last one, which would have let me out just like 2 months early or something like that, just so I could get a little head start.
Yeah,
and they were like,
yeah.
Nope. Like, what? Seriously, 2 months?
I got 2 months ago. Yeah. Well, you remember my dad died.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, my dad died. Look, this is what they do to me. I'm sorry, another anecdotal story, just real quick. Is stuff the church actually paid because we didn't have the money, so they actually paid for me to go to my dad's funeral. Now, you would figure that they would have some kind of decorum or grace about it, as far as not bringing me handcuffed and shackled to a military funeral, and with the guys doing the 21 gun salute, the whole 9 yards, the American flag being handed to my mom, the military funeral. And here I am shackled, I mean, by my waist like this, tied around my waist, and then, that's just a kind of an example, of some of the horrors, stuff, that you go through. I mean, I feel blessed I was able to be at my dad's funeral, but not under those circumstances.
And guys, if you don't understand the significance of that, now, most of you know my channel. I'm a psychopath, so I don't have normal feelings, but I've seen it enough when someone's locked up and like mom or dad or sister or brother or wife or something dies, and it's like, this is the situation I was in, right? I mean, my family members' last memories of me were in prison, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't be there for my family. I can't be there for my mom. I can't be there for anyone else.
Exactly.
Because I've done, I've done stuff that got me left up, and so it's basically it's not the same as, being able to be there for someone when when someone dies.
Well, your decisions have affected other people's lives so much. That's where a lot of the remorse comes in, and stuff. A lot of the, asking God for forgiveness for that. But I want, again, stuff. We have only a certain amount of time, so I kind of want to get to how things went. I got out of state prison. It was 1999, I believe it was. And was immediately diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I had gotten into a car wreck that almost took my life, literally a month getting out of prison. Crushed my femur. I had my lip was ripped off my face. They had to sew all that back on. They had to put my leg back together. 1.5 years of healing from that. So, I was down for, a good little bit of time there. So once I was able to walk again, once I learned to walk again, they had to teach me to walk again, all this stuff. Diagnosed. It was kind of like a free-for-all. All of a sudden, the whole world was my oyster, and all these temptations, the girls, the drugs, the lifestyle. And keep in mind, I'm a tattoo artist, so I mean, there was the usual people coming to tattoo shops, and I'm saying I tattooed very professional people, but most of my clientele was professional. But you still have your drug dealers and your people and the old friends you used to hang out with and stuff. They love to come around, especially when they find out that you're doing well for yourself.
Hey, I want to check with you on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have an experience that there are lots of ladies who are just extra attracted to you because you're ex-con? Run into that?
Yeah.
Oh man, listen. So I get out.
Yeah.
I get out. I jump right back into school. I ended up taking a criminal justice course, just as an elective.
That's the last course.
And I ended up talking to my professor, telling her that I'm an ex-con and so on, and she had me she had me speak to the class about prison, so from firsthand perspective what prison's like.
Right.
But then I ended up speaking for a bunch of professors in the criminal justice department. They all wanted me to come talk about prison and so on. And look, so I'd be speaking to these classes. There's 30.
Actually, I think I came to one. Remember, I did come to one.
You did?
Yeah. Yeah, remember I visited you in Nabil up at the college, and you were getting set to do it. I didn't actually hear it, and you guys had to go in. Yeah, it's something I remember. I had something I had to do or whatever, and I went my way, and you guys did the thing. I remember that.
So here's the creepy part. I would speak to these classrooms of 30 to 35 students, and there would always be 1 or 2 or 3 girls in the class giving me googly eyes the entire time, right? Like, just like, this is so awesome. And then they come up and talk to me afterwards. Oh, David, could you help me with my project that I'm working on for criminal justice? And I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you? I just told you a story about my past, and I'm a violent ex-felon and an ex-mental patient, and you're somehow...
What do you find possibly attractive about me? It takes either one heck of a woman who is extremely understanding, or the other side of things. And unfortunately, I fell into some of those traps and stuff when I got out. And once you make that first step onto that slippery slope of backsliding, it's a very, very fast way down.
Hang on, hold that thought, because I wanted to stop on this to talk to the ladies out there.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Guys, do not, if you're going to write guys in prison, exhort them with the gospel. Do stuff like that. Don't write. How can I say? Don't get into relationships with guys in prison. It never ends well. Stuff. Most of the guys in there are master manipulators. Stuff with huge narcissistic, tendencies. And believe me, no matter how smart you think you are or whatever, they will con you. Hey, don't do it.
It's interesting. So these young ladies and stuff would want to be talking to me afterwards, and I'm thinking like there's clearly something wrong with you, right?
Right.
If this is all you know about me and you're attracted to it somehow, right?
I think it's a bad boiler.
It is. But there's something psychologically correct about that. I didn't understand until I was watching Jordan Peterson talk about what kind of men women are attracted to. You do have women who are attracted to nice guys and so on, but the main type of guy that women are attracted to, according to Jordan Peterson, says every psychological study done on it, most women are attracted to a guy who's dangerous but civilized, right?
Yeah.
Dangerous but civilized. And so someone who is civilized, he's not going, he's not a terrible person, but at the same time he's also dangerous if he needs to be, right? If he needs to be in that situation. And so
I think they find that kind of hot, that sort of dangerous element.
This guy's speaking for the criminal justice department, so he's a good guy, and he's talking about he became a Christian, so he's a good guy, and yet he could chop someone's head off if he needed to and stuff. And so it's like Marie, like Marie, when I met Marie, I talked to Marie, and she liked me before. I had to warn her about that. It's like, okay, we had to sit down, like, okay, let me tell you about my past and stuff, right? So it wasn't she was attracted to me because of the bad boy thing, but even she saw an appeal in it. She said, like, her boyfriend before she met me, like, guys would check her out and even try to chat her up right in front of the dude, right? Guys weren't scared or intimidated at all. They'd be checking her out. And she said that would instantly stop. That instantly stopped and never happened again. When she was with me, and it, somehow, even I'm old now, but back then I was in my mid-20s and straight out of prison. Apparently, you just give off some vibe like I will kick the crap out of you. And actually, I didn't know this, but like, someone actually came up to me in my first semester out. I was in a communications class, and there was like a break halfway through the class, and I'm just standing up against the wall, and a girl comes up to me and she goes, "Why are you always standing like you're about to fight somebody?" And I had no clue, right? It's just whenever there was a break, if there was a bunch of people around, you have this experience, you slowly sort of put your back up against the wall to keep everyone in front of you, right? I had no idea what I was doing, but she said, "Why are you standing like you're ready to fight somebody?" I'm up against the wall. I look down, I've got my fists clenched. My body is like tightened up, And I'm like, whoa, I had no idea that I'm standing like this. And so you're just giving off this kind of vibe, but apparently some ladies, I don't know, like that. And so, but here's the thing. So going back to what you're talking about, all of a sudden, all these ladies are, are attracted to you because of the bad boy thing. And then it's all right up in your face.
Yeah, exactly. And when you go a great length of time, you don't. And the thing is, this isn't just about sex. This isn't just about relationship, or whatever, or desperately trying to find, like some validity, it's to make yourself relevant again. I mean, because when you're in prison, it's almost like you're dead. Friends, family, they either die, they slip away, stuff over the years, they get married, they, go to whatever, stuff. And next thing you know, you're standing alone. And, that was when I had to hit that bottom and, stuff to really, really be able to bring Christ, stuff and ask him into my heart, and to take the wheel in my life, because I knew that, hey, I'm sitting here in prison. Obviously, I made some bad decisions in my life, and Lord, hello, I need help, kind of thing. And I mean, he was faithful and good to do that. And, it kind of makes me feel ashamed. I was out for 7 years. I worked 12 hours a day. I mean, literally, I had an hour and 20-minute commute back and forth to work. I basically ended up back to the old habits, back to the drugs, back to the chasing women, back to the, that whole lifestyle that kind of goes with being on the fringe, of society, or whatever you want to call it. And my appearance, unfortunately, I was very young when I got a lot of my tattoo work done. I mean, for instance, like my hands, here, go the right way. Like my hands are tattooed, my neck's tattooed. So I really I don't regret it, but I really wish I'd thought more about that before I did it. And I mean, most people look at me now, the first thing is they stiffen up, because they think, oh God, this guy's going to
freak.
Yeah, or this guy's going to attack me for no reason, whatever. And I'm nothing like that. I mean, at one point, when I was younger, I mean, I was, not the nicest person in the world to be around, but, as time went on, I got older and I, grew up and God worked in my life. This is the person you see sitting here today. 7 years of a bad marriage, 7 years of working myself to death, using the excuse that, oh, well, of course, cocaine will keep me awake for the hour and 20-minute haul at 1 o'clock in the morning that I had to make to get home from work. I mean, I always had great excuses for whatever actions that I was taking. Now, there's some funny stuff to this story here, kind of coming up. And also some pretty tragic stuff. But, my wife had ended up cheating on me. To be honest with you, it broke my mind for a little bit. That was probably the closest I ever came to hitting a woman in my life. Instead, I left the dent in the refrigerator. Thank God, instead of her face. But, it was one of those
life
things.
Lesson.
Yes.
You feel like hitting.
Go for the
fridge. Go for the fridge, guys.
Don't ever hit a woman.
Smash the fridge.
Ever. Yeah, that's not acceptable. I tell you what, if I ever catch somebody hitting a woman in front of me and stuff, and all, it's on.
He won't be hitting the fridge.
And it won't be a fridge. Yeah, he'll be whoever that person is. But anyways, getting back on track, just all of these things. I remember walking. I had a dog. I mean, a Rottweiler. I mean, he was my buddy. His name was Exile. I named him after a Slayer song. I mean, I know. Slayer is definitely not Christian oriented, but anyways, we were walking down by the river. That was right behind my house, and I remember looking at the sky, raising my arms up, and saying, "God, I can't take this anymore." I said, if I'm married another day to this woman, I'm going to end up killing her and killing myself. Something's got to break here. I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing here. I strayed away from you. Lord, please, I need your help. I know I haven't been praying to you like I should. I know I haven't been faithful in my life like I should. And I need to get back on the right track, here. And I need your help. Well, sometimes when you pray for help, it sometimes comes in ways that you could never imagine. The next day, I go to work. I get a phone call from this guy that I had dealings with in the past and did some tattoo work for. And I was supposed to, basically, it was a gun by gone wrong type thing. The ATF showed up with 27 agents to arrest me because they had looked at my prior record, had decided that I was so violent that they needed 27 people to apprehend me. And I'm not exaggerating. There was 27 people there. I mean, like all the task force, the feds. I mean, the ATF was there. The DEA was there.
They heard Kane had something going down.
Yeah, well, they thought that I was selling guns to gang. Well, I was kind of. But let's not get too involved in that. It involved gang members.
Your secret is safe with me, dude.
And the millions that are watching, and stuff, and the federal agents that are probably watching this right now, whatever. No, I mean it wasn't anything like that. They made a huge deal over a small time guy. I was in the middle of a tattoo when I went out to meet the guy, and that's when they jumped me in the parking lot. And I get arrested, and they're saying you're going to get life, and stuff. This was right around the time the shooting of Virginia Tech. I don't know if you guys remember that in 2007. That horrific. Of course, a ton of people. My timing, 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that was probably not the best planning in the world. To be selling or buying a gun. So, anyways, the ATF, of course, was pretty thick. And through the area, and they were doing a series of stings through a snitch that they had. And that kid that I tattooed, I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to put him out there like that, but I'd love to. But anyways, he was the one who set me up. I went out there, and of course I get apprehended. They do, their usual stuff. They try to break you. They went back to my house. They threatened my wife. They threatened, now my ex-wife. They seized my car and then tried to sell it back to my ex-wife. I mean, that was the kind of dirty stuff they were doing.
That's kind of funny, though.
And then I find out that the guy who arrested me was the one who brought down the Outlaws in Maryland, which I don't know if you're familiar with. The Outlaws is a biker MC 1%er kind of group, or whatever. And, which, I mean, they really brought the big dogs out on me for no reason whatsoever, so I really kind of think this is all God there. God was saying, okay, God, you prayed that you needed change, you needed a difference. Here's your change.
No, they heard Kane's got something going down, so they had to bring in the 27.
Yeah, well, and they brought in the 27, and my mug picture was a little red face. It wasn't from embarrassment; it was probably from the beating. But anyway,
reap what you sow, man.
Yeah, I definitely reaped what I sowed on that one. But anyway, so after 7 years of I mean, in every other aspect of my life, my main thing is I have fallen off, like having. Being around like-minded people, other Christians, everybody else hanging out with was, I mean, some of them were just straight anti-Christ, anti-religion, period. And the majority of them were just atheists and, didn't believe really in anything, And of course, birds of a feather fly together. You start hanging out with the same group over and over and over and over, you're going to start making the same mistakes. And I mean, basically that's the trap that I got caught in, and I don't care how smart you are, how intelligent you are, how much you think that you're a player in the game or whatever, you're always going to lose, stuff. You can't fight God, and you can't fight God's will in your life, and if he needs to get your attention, he will get your attention. Trust me on that. Twice he got my attention, and David brought a good point up earlier, and I kind of wanted to expound on that too. It can happen to anyone. It takes 1 or 2 seconds for something to happen, for you to lose your temper, anything and stuff, and you can end the rest of your life literally by an action that takes a couple seconds and pay for it for the rest of your life.
Especially when, I mean, you're conditioned in prison to be much more aggressive, to have much more of an attitude towards certain people, and just if you think that someone's trying you, right?
Yeah.
You show up to prison, people try you, right? That means they start feeling you out to figure out, are you going to stand up for yourself or something like that, right? And so if you even think now you're out of prison, and if someone says something, you think this person's trying me, then you got to let them know. You got to let them know instantly.
Do you remember the Snickers bar I put on your pillow?
No, what was that?
Remember I put that Snickers bar on your pillow?
No.
And you came back and you stared at it.
In prison?
Yeah. And you stared at it, and then you looked up at me, and you're like, you just, just pointed at it, like he usually does, and just looks at me with this quizzical look, and I said, "There's a candy bar for you, buddy." He ate it. He ate the candy bar. You're really lucky I wasn't. Yeah, that's one thing. When you're in prison, you don't accept presents. If you have a candy bar or something sitting under your pillow or on your pillow, you run. And stuff, or you find out who did it and handle the situation quickly. Because things could get way out of control way fast in there.
I don't remember that at all.
No, I remember I even remember the candy bar, Snickers bar. I
do remember there was a stretch of time when I was only getting like 3 to 4 hours sleep a night because I had myself on such a schedule of stuff to do, and then on like Saturday I would just pass out from exhaustion. And I remember waking up, and you had put a sign over my bed that said sloth. Right?
Yeah, I do remember that.
With an arrow pointing towards me. I was mad. I woke up and I'm like, I worked myself to death all week, and you call me sloth.
He never shows like that much. He was pissed. Yeah. He was so bad. We only had phones or camera things in there. That would have been a perfect picture, But I want to kind of get back to a recidivism thing. Just, I mean, in our country, I do kind of have to, put that out there. The incarceration rate in the U.S. is astronomical. We're releasing 300 million, I think it was, prisoners a year. 83% recidivism rate, especially in state prisons, things like that. I mean, we obviously have a problem in our country, stuff with recidivism. And that begs the question, then how would a Christian get caught up in the same thing, become part of that 83%?
They're supposed to be changed.
Exactly.
Supposed to be different, right?
And I was different when stuff what I'd left, and my faith never wavered in God through this whole thing. I always, I still had a relationship, but it was because God still had a relationship with me. I had backed off from that relationship. God never backed off from me, though. He was always there. He always had his hand on me. He always kept me safe. And like that car accident, they said there's no way anybody should have survived it. I was in a 1983 Dodge pickup truck with the ones with the big tubbed out hubs and stuff. The thing is all metal. It's like 10,000 pounds, and I hit an ambulance of all things. The ambulance drifted out in front of me, and because they had a mental health patient in the back that was going off, and he didn't realize his foot was off the brake, and I T-boned him at 70 miles an hour. So you can imagine, most people don't survive those wrecks. People don't survive wrecks at 30 miles an hour, never mind 70. So, yeah, I that thing I will testify that even with my disobedience and rebellion, and stuff, God still had my back, and that's the reason, again, so when I went back to prison, I went into such a depression. I mean, it's probably the only time in my life I ever considered killing myself, because I'd let down everyone I loved. I'd let down, I let myself down. I let God down. I let my mom down. I let every single person I let David down. And it was embarrassing. It was humiliating. It really, you talk about self-introspection, that was definitely, at least a year of that, and for that first year that I did, of like what went wrong. And, kind of going over that, I slowly, started like personally reading the Bible, stuff, and then, attended a few services here and there, and kind of slowly worked my way, kind of back into my faith again. It's not like I ever lost it, but it became strong again. It really felt like the Holy Spirit was again working in my life. Now, I did 57 months, and then I got out, and same kind of thing, back to work, 12 hours a day, the same thing again. But I had learned some valuable lessons this time. For me, it took 2 times, to get it through my thick head. But, like now, despite like Dave knows about the health problems and stuff that I have. I have Crohn's disease. I don't think I mentioned that yesterday. Often flare up. I have a lot of health issues and stuff like that, and it's very easy to use that as an excuse, like, not to do your Bibles, not to pray, to just hang around feeling sorry for yourself and stuff like that. I just refuse to do that, because now, we worship a living God, and I feel that in my heart now. Maybe something I didn't quite fully understand or get maybe the first time. I got it like as a baby would, but now I get it as an adult. Stuff. Like I was telling you, all these verses are coming back to me. It really feels like God is actually speaking in my heart now. And I'm like, even some of my actions, I've looked at it. Wait a second, why did I react like that? And I said, hey, it's all God. It's a wonderful feeling when you feel that God finally takes the steering wheel in your life. And that was I think that was the thing that I needed to learn. I tried to do things my own way for those 7 years. I said, I'm smart enough, and I'm, whatever, almost like that. I don't know if you guys remember the old SNL sketch, remember he would look in the mirror, Stewart would look in the mirror. I'm good enough, smart enough, and darn it, people like me. They use the other word, but, I guess I kind of had that attitude toward things. That I just thought I could kind of manipulate and sort of just kind of get myself, through, just make it, you know what I mean? Just kind of just making it, and then, one bad habit got added in, and another one got added in, and next thing you know, I'm 10 times worse off than I was. And that is one thing. I believe, I'm trying to think the exact quote, just to paraphrase a verse from the Bible, stuff, kind of returning to their vomit, like a dog returns to their vomit sort of thing. That's exactly the way it feels. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, there were many times where I felt like the biggest, what in the world for walking away from God. And that would even drive me farther away. Because I remember myself, here I am out there, with you, we're saving souls, breaking necks and cashing checks kind of thing, we had a good roll going, and then it just, I don't know, it's some parts of it, I don't really understand why it happened, so, why I ended up, well, other than getting snitched on, that does kind of, throw a thing in there, but, the fact that I prayed, though, to God the day before, and it's ironic because I saw these black SUVs hanging out across the street from me. And every day I would go out and look at them. I'd be like, I know who you are.
They have these government license plates.
Yes, and there's a guy who run a taxi company that lived 2 houses down from me. Well, he was running crack through his taxi agency. He was making drug deliveries. So I was like, man, that daggone idiot that lives down there is bringing heat on this whole neighborhood. I can't stand him. I don't know why he's doing this, blah, blah, blah. Little did I know, those black SUVs were there for me. They were watching me for 5 months, literally under surveillance for 5 months, stuff, until they finally struck. And I kind of find it extremely, coincidental or whatever you want to call it, that, when I pray, I say, God, okay, I give up and I put it in your hands, that I'm in cuffs the next day and I'm in an isolation cell, just with my thoughts and my regrets and everything else. And you talk about being broken down, God broke me down like a shotgun. He broke me all the way down. And like I said, sometimes you have to hit that rock bottom. I really wish a lot of people wouldn't. But unfortunately, spiritually, that seems to be the thing. There is no middle. You can't have a foot in both worlds. You can't have a foot in the secular world, and you can't have a foot in the spiritual world and expect them to cohabitate. You know what I mean? You learn how to make both worlds work with each other. But the thing is, there are some things you cannot ever. Well, what's the best way? There's some things
like oil and water.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to know how far to go. You have to know how to handle situations. Not lose your temper. Put your hands on somebody, because prison leaves you with this mentality of your head's on a swivel. You're constantly kind of watching your six. You're always. It's a constant stress, a constant adrenaline rush. And then you get out and all of a sudden you don't have it. So you look for other things to give you an adrenaline rush. At least that a lot of times was with me. I hate to admit that, but that really kind of was a lot of the thing. Mm-hmm. I missed, the
it's not boring
lifestyle, and I missed, things, and I missed, I even found myself missing prison from time to time. Just because I was working so hard and so long to try to make up for all those years I missed, and then making a horrible, about my marriage and all, and how bad that was. Now I'm with the absolute best woman in the world right now and stuff. Tony, hello, if you're watching this, I love you. And that's Toni, not Tony. So any jokes about that, we can stop that before that starts. But
you seriously think someone in the comment section would make that joke? Come on, dude.
Well, yeah, I do.
A couple quick comments, real quick, before I lose them. AA said post-prison ministry needed. Yeah, that's there's not sufficient warning for prison inmates, even Christian prison inmates. Hey, here's what's going to happen when you get out. Here's how getting out is going to affect you. So people aren't prepared for it, right? There's
no preparation.
Just imagine this, right? It's, hey, you committed this crime. Now, our solution for it, we're going to stick you in this building with murderers, robbers, rapists, drug dealers, and so on for 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, and then put you back out in society.
And then expect you to behave,
and then just adapt and be normal and better. It's like, wait a minute, my entire environment for the past 5-10 years has been criminal, right? And it has affected my thinking and so on. And so, yeah, it just has to be better.
That's a phenomenon of being institutionalized and stuff. Yeah. Often people that have been locked up as long as we were, end up getting what's called institutionalized, which basically means that you really can't exist outside of an extremely disciplined environment.
You think like a convict, right?
And taking those same principles, out here, unfortunately, will probably get you back in the cell pretty quick. These days and stuff, you can't. There's no fights in a bar parking lot like we were talking earlier. Shake hands, buy each other a beer, and it's over. No, they call the cops. You get 5 to 20. It's a totally different day and age. A lot of things have changed. And maybe I was a bit stuck in the past too, on a few issues, in there, but I don't know.
Iskalka Quest 2010 said, I worked with an ex-con, had his MA, was buffed, and did fine for a year or two, then stated he was comfortable around normies, eventually had a girlfriend who used pot. It went down from there. Notice it didn't take a lot. It didn't take a lot to get him back on a certain path.
Yeah, gateway drug.
Yeah, the gateway back to prison.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Gateway back to prison. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it.
Psalm 116 said, David, are you still in contact with Randy? I'm glad someone here knows that this is not Randy. Again, as I said yesterday,
not Randy,
this
guys.
dude is the opposite of Randy, right? If you know Randy, this dude
I don't know Randy personally. I
opposite.
just know he's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I, you know, all the comments like I noticed last night. I can't wait to meet Randy too, because I mean, you know, it seems like he was an incredible, amazing guy. You know, I mean, if you got your hard-headed butt to, you know, come around to seeing the truth, and he must have something about him.
Yeah, he's all right. And yes, I am still in contact with him. Again, Randy's still locked up. I send him money every month. You know why? Because it sucks being in prison and no one sends you any money.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind if you know someone who's
this
one
up. Here, this was the one that made sure that I was okay. I mean, the second time that you know when I got locked up again, I actually you know, so the last couple of years I stopped tattooing. I wouldn't because it was against the rules. You know, I mean, I really kind of took it seriously about following man's law and as well as following God's law. And you talk about some really pissed off people. They weren't too happy about the fact that I wouldn't tattoo them anymore. But, you know, I just felt that it you know, I didn't need anything to keep me in prison longer, any longer than I needed to be, like getting caught and getting punished or whatever. So, you know, my second bit was definitely a lot more introspective and you know, I left with a lot more caution, you know, and here I'm sitting now. I mean, I've been out, but how many years now? Gosh, years and years now, a decade, you know, whatever. I think a little under a decade. Something like that. And, I mean, now, you know, you know, prison's not even, you know, it's so far in my past, I can't even see it, except for, you know, when times like, you know, when I talk about it now, you know, or, you know, I'm trying to talk to somebody, you know, who's about to make a really, really big mistake in their life, you know, or something like that. You know, I try to, you know, counsel, you know, younger people that, you know, that think that being a drug dealer is cool or, you know, or whatever, you know, and I you know, we're actually trying to start like a little bit of a community outreach in our local community, you know, to help the youth that, you know, that meth and all these drugs are completely, you know, ruining. I mean, I literally, almost all my friends are dead, you know. I mean, my very, very close friends, people I went to school with, they're all dead now, you know. They had the OD. It's horrible, you know. You know, and guys, I mean, I don't know. I mean, just a little anti-drug message real quick. Yeah, the first time it's great, you know, and stuff, but you'll spend the rest of your life chasing that first time, and it's not worth it. You know, don't waste your money. Don't waste your time. Don't piss God off. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not going to say that God says drugs are right or wrong or whatever, but the way you act when you're on them is wrong. You know, so, and definitely not godlike. You know, you're not following the example of Christ. You know, if you're sitting there smoking a blunt and snorting lines with a bunch of people. You know, I mean, that's not the, you know, acceptable, you know, Christian construct, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. You know, and it's like the recidivism rate, you know, is so high in this country, basically because there are no programs really for people getting out. Now, on paper, you can get on the internet. And I know a lot of you are already reaching for your phones to look, you know, to look for like all the programs that are available for inmates. Let me tell you, they're not available for inmates. When you get out, you leave with prison clothes on your back, or if you're lucky and you had people send your personal clothes and you walk out.
I had prison clothes on.
Yeah, I had prison clothes too. I left them in the prison parking lot.
I left wearing exactly the same clothes I was wearing in prison.
Really?
Yeah.
I dropped them in the parking lot, in the prison parking lot, and left them there when we drove off.
I still got mine somewhere. I still got mine in a box somewhere.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. Yeah, keep you honest.
I saved my stuff. Yeah, we do want to get into this basically. Getting out and sort of bringing some stuff together, and then I got some additional thoughts to share. I did want to do a little side note, just because totally unrelated, but it keeps coming up in the comments section because of your tattoos. The KJV 1611 Christian Muhammad Chowdhury said, "I do like the tattoos on you, but I do believe as a Christian who believe Jesus is Almighty God, I cannot have a tattoos." Okay,
God bless you, bro, man. But you know,
yeah, we don't want to go on this too long. I'm just
yeah.
wondering why. So give us a good answer. I'll go ahead and post it real quick. Now there is a little delay. We're like 20 to 30 seconds behind, so he won't be seeing this until like
right. And please don't throw the Deuteronomy verse.
Let him quote. It's Leviticus. Let him quote Leviticus.
Oh yeah, Leviticus. Not bad. Yeah.
Let him go and quote, but you know, someone might say something else and say because your body's a temple of the Holy Spirit or something like that. And so, or I'm just wondering. That's why.
Yeah.
Because maybe someone's got something that I haven't heard before. CJS said, "Can we see your prison clothes?" I'd have to find them. I usually don't throw stuff out, so it's most likely
he wears them like every other day around the neighborhood to look hard.
Yeah, I do. I keep one button on top opened up with the rest of it.
You know, up here in these mountains, we like these prison clothes you got there.
I should. Hey guys, and a lot of people were asking, saying,
there I am giving away your location.
A lot of people were asking. A lot of people were asking, can I draw Zach the Serpent again?
Yes, I saw.
And I was thinking, yeah. I probably have that too. Because the warden had me take it down. I would have just I would have just stuck that in a folder somewhere and kept it. So I probably have that because all my stuff I had when I left prison, I just stuck in a box somewhere. And
I believe someone sent you some cartoons too. I think they wanted you to check out. It's stuff, you know. It's kind of cool when you get stuff, you know, like when people do things like that. You know, I mean, I know I'm certainly appreciative of people, you know, comment, message, and stuff like that. You know, even when things are negative, you know, I mean, our main. I mean, Dave's main thing, my main thing and stuff. The main thing we want to see is people giving their lives, you know, to Christ. I mean, and it's not like entering a contract or something like that. I mean, people make it so much more complicated than what it is. I mean, if you sincerely want Jesus to start making some changes in your life, and you want to start making some changes in your life, you know, you get on those knees, pray, you know, God is listening, you know, you're a prayer away, you know, I mean, take it, they're, you know, I mean, look around for a good Bible believing church, you know, find a place to where you can surround yourself with like-minded individuals and stuff, people that are all, you know, we all have our struggles, we all have our fights, you know, and stuff and our problems, but it's a lot better to share with Christians than to share with, you know, say non-Christians and stuff, especially when you're talking from a spiritual point. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that. I surrounded myself with people that were into, and some people were into some pretty evil things and some bad stuff. And, you know, you surround yourself with that, it's going to rub off on you eventually, you know, and unfortunately it did, you know. And I actually the whole thing was I was kind of doing just a favor for somebody, but it was also greed, you know, and so because of the money that was involved, you know, I was greedy. I knew it was too good to be true, but still went for it, you know, so I mean, obviously my thinking was not in the right place, and there it was back in prison again, you know, and my divorce papers were served on my birthday. Trying to think of some other stuff. Yeah, that would have to be a whole nother show when I went through in the feds. I was at USP Canaan. I know some guys who were at USPs, or they were in the federal system. I was at USP Canaan. I ended up at Butner because of my health, because of the Crohn's disease at the very end. But the federal system is, I guarantee you, a place that you never, ever, ever want to go to. You know, it is, I mean, literally in there, gangs run those prisons, and it's a very, very, very dangerous place, especially the USPs and the high security levels. You know, I had 57 months when the average thing on the yard was 36 to life, you know, so that was definitely a hairy time there, you know.
We actually got some responses back on the tattoos.
Okay.
So we have, let's see. So Rory here says, well, because it was a pagan practice. By the way, I'm Rory Husky. So we have it was a pagan practice, and then we had the quotation from Leviticus 19:28.
Yeah, I was waiting on
updates
that.
posted
yeah.
over and over again. You shall not make gashes in your flesh for the dead, or incise any marks on yourselves. So the marks on yourselves would be tattoo.
Now, may I put my explanation of that?
Sure. You can give the incorrect explanation, and I'll give the correct one.
Okay. Well, we'll see about that. Okay.
But by the way, the only reason we're doing this is because it's a good exercise. Yeah. It's a good exercise in
I mean, basically, this is the thing about tattoos and stuff. I prayed about it. I did pray about it. I asked the Lord to convict me, to convict my heart if I was doing something that was offensive to him or wrong. And one of the guys that I work with, Josh, again, a born-again Christian. I worked for, actually the last shop I worked for was basically a Christian tattoo shop. Most of the people in there were Christian, stuff, and we had a very good vibe there, until we let non-Christians start working there, then the problems started, But up until that point, stuff. I mean, this is after I got out the second time, I worked at the shop for, I think, 11 years, I think it was. But, great bunch of guys and stuff, but, again, it's funny. I put myself back in the same environment again. I mean, it's what I do for a living. But this time I was smart about it. I didn't get back into the old habits. I didn't get back into the old, things. I mean, to be honest, to be utterly 100% honest with you, yes, there was a slip here and there, years ago and stuff and all, but, I'd like to say that, I'm getting it figured out,
Mm-hmm.
This is a lifelong thing, guys. You have to run the race to the end. This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon, and I mean, as far as the tattooing, I'm not actively tattooing right now. It's due to an injury. I mean, my hand, I had to have surgery, all the way down my arm and stuff. I just don't really feel like going through that. So I just went ahead and kind of semi-retired for a few years, and then I'm going to reevaluate. The ministry, has been one of the things I've been thinking about getting into, that sort of thing, or at least counseling, or something up that line. But, with all the tattoos, like, for instance, Josh was even worse than I was. He wouldn't even do zodiac signs. Mm-hmm. He would do nothing, but, like I would not, and actually, even at my worst, I refused I would not do satanic tattoos. I would not do like inverted pentagrams. Somebody tricked me into putting a Leviathan cross on them until I found out later what it was. Stuff, unfortunately, I mean, that does happen occasionally, but, anything that I thought that would be against God, or something that, what I mean, it's displeased with, I would turn it down or I'd hand it off to another artist,
Yeah. So basically two things. One, Rory said it's a pagan practice. And I mean, if that's your criteria, I mean, prayer is a pagan practice.
There's a lot
Pagans
of
did all kinds of things, right?
Eating was a pagan practice. Breathing was
practice.
Yeah.
And so it's just because the pagans practiced something does not make it wrong. And so you need something better than, well, pagans did it, right? So what you could do is what, quoting Leviticus 19:28 did. Well, here it's specifically defining tattoos as this practice that the Jews were not allowed to follow, and so on. And the problem there is just reading the passage in context. The Jews were being set apart to be a peculiar, a special people,
yeah.
a separate people, and so on. But there were lots of things that were just meant to. Mm-hmm. Here, you're going to be easily distinguishable from everyone else.
Yeah.
And if you look, let's go to the verse right before it, right? And just so you know, there's a question of. In verse 20,
if you read the whole chapter, if you keep that verse in context, you might get a different view of it.
You might even get a different view from the verse. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourselves. So this sounds like it's a practice for doing cuts. Something with for the dead. But just look at the verse before it. Leviticus 19:27, the verse right before it. Do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. So verse before, do not cut the hair at
You're
the sides of
going
your
right
head
with my argument
or
here.
clip
Yeah,
off
that's
the
exactly.
edges of your beard.
Right.
So in order for the Jews
I
to
can
be
grow a full beard.
in order
so.
for the Jews to be easily distinguishable from everyone around them, they were told, "Hey, don't trim the sides of your beard. Don't cut the hair on the sides of your head."
That's why
Now,
you see a lot of the Orthodox Jews. You'll see
they'll have the braids on the side of their head because they won't cut it. And so the question is, you see someone like Cain or something like that. Why are you not complaining about him trimming the sides of his beard? Instead, if you're really saying, hey, you are under the Mosaic covenant of and everything it entails about being a person
now you're
easily
coming full
distinguishable.
circle to what I was thinking too, a logic on old law versus new law, stuff. I mean, the thing is, if my tattooing became such a stumbling block to someone else, to another fellow Christian, or say to a Christian community, then absolutely I could understand, stepping away from that, stuff, because I certainly wouldn't want to be a stumbling block to somebody, or my actions, cause them, to lose faith or to not even consider, accepting Christ into their heart, because they're like, look at this guy, he's tattooing over there and he claims to be a Christian, what I mean, you can't live your whole life, like making concessions for every single person. But I could see if it became a big enough stumbling block in the community, I absolutely would walk away from it in a second, stuff and all, for God's glory, not for my own, whatever, but for God's glory, and in order to advance the gospel rather than to become, another wall that people are able to put up, to deny it.
Now Rory says, you mean don't have a beard? I don't believe that. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't have a beard.
Read the verse
saying,
27.
It's saying don't cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard.
Let's make this simple here.
Or clip off the edges of your beard.
Like,
the point is, if you're saying
this is the way, stuff like the traditional, stuff, people back in, the Orthodox Jews, wore their hair. They took it literally. They actually have the scrolls on their foreheads where it says to put the word of God on your forehead. They took literally every single part of that. So you have to keep that in mind.
The thing you find is when you have to go to Leviticus to defend a point, like you can't go to like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? When you have to go to Leviticus to make a point, it's usually people who are being very selective.
How many years has it been?
Here's something that I can't defend any other way, so I'm going to go here, even though you should know better. I mean, if you're going to go there, be consistent and be someone who says that Christians are still under the Mosaic covenant, right? I mean, you'd be considered heretical because they specifically address that.
Well, Christ came to fulfill the law. That's what I'm saying. He fulfilled the law. He took all of our sin upon his back. I mean, that's why, his Father couldn't even regard him on the cross because of all the terrible stuff, all the sin of the world, everything, every awful thing every human being has ever done. Jesus died for, even to the point his own Father looked at him and couldn't count, and his head turned his back, and stuff. And he said, Father, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Remember, I mean, with that, I mean, it's, I certainly wouldn't be engaging in an activity that I thought was so anti-God or offensive to God. You know what I mean? That I would take that sacrifice that Jesus made for me, for granted like that.
Yeah. Now Rory is saying Acts 17 blocked me on Skype. I don't recall blocking you on Skype, but if I did, it would be because you every time I would be on Skype, you would start calling me 50 times.
Probably
don't remember, but you got to go now, dude. We got a topic. We're talking about a topic, and I mean, multiple people call you troll because whenever there's a topic, you start trying to divert it. So, yeah, you got to go now, and bye. All right, now back to what we were talking about before being sidetracked.
You troll, you roll. Yeah, that's the way we do it here.
All right, so here we go. Getting out of prison. You've brought up a couple of issues.
Okay.
So, issue one, all of a sudden, the world is your oyster. All these things, you have instant access to all these things
I come
that you haven't been around for years.
Yeah.
Right?
Living a I think you said that earlier today when we were talking, like a monastic, sort of like living in an abbey or like as a monk or something. You have no physical contact with anyone, stuff. And I mean, even just the basic touch, the basic human touch. You don't have that. You don't have any of that. And a lot of people don't understand how much that really, really messes with your head. After years of that, after years of being beaten by guards, by, getting in fights, whatever, stuff, it really, really does change your brain. It changes your mind, and God is really the only way, not person, but God is the only one that can pull you up out of that, especially when you get past the point of being able to pull yourself out of it. And that's where I had to
tell people. I made a video on when you recently started having all this anti-cop stuff. I had to make a video titled "Why Some People Hate Cops." And one of the things of the things I talked about was after you're locked up for so long, where your community is inmates, and the enemies who mess with you are cops.
Yeah.
You get out and I had to struggle with that for a year because I did not like cops. Like even when I ended up having a couple of friends from church who were cops, I really, really did not like cops. And
I just didn't trust them. That was my main issue. I didn't trust them. So like honesty is not the best policy in an interrogation room. Let's just put it that way. They use everything against you. Every word you say, they use against you. And they're very tricky. The Supreme Court actually ruled that they can use deception in order to gain a confession or to whatever. And I really think that's a bunch of BS, and that's not what we're talking about. I mean, I don't want to get onto that, but you do kind of get kind of a bad taste in your mouth for LE. But I support law enforcement 100%, especially with everybody's aware of recent events and stuff. Obviously, I am 100%. On the side of law and order.
Really? They don't do any screwed up stuff? Because you're more pro-cop now than I am.
They absolutely do. I mean, it's and I actually have a channel that keeps me honest that I watch, stuff, and it shows when cops do stuff they shouldn't be doing. There's a lot. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember Katrina. It's something you're watching cops looting stores. Did you know over in France, the French police acquit and are with protesters now? I mean, it's a new day.
Now it's the anti-cop show. My goodness, man.
No, I'm saying good things about it. I'm just saying that my whole kind of picture of that changed. Stuff. Of course, at first, and he's absolutely right. That first year, I mean, you see a cop car, you stiffen up. 2 hands on the wheel, and you don't have anything in your car. You don't have anything to worry about. But you know what? All it takes is one of them seeing your record, throwing a little baggie in your car, and guess what? You're gone for life. And that scares the heck out of me sometimes, It's just one of those things, we put ourselves in the situations. And unfortunately, it's a lifelong decision that we made, and we have to live with that, So I would much rather, have peaceful coexistence with law enforcement than a bad one,
All right. So basically, you get out of prison, and I mean, you can imagine if you haven't eaten, let's say you've been starving for 30 days straight, and then there's some food in front of you, right? You kind of jump all over that and stuff. And so you have all of these temptations that you haven't had to deal with in a long time, and all of a sudden they're all right in front of you. And so some people just lose their minds and go buck wild. And there are 2 ways to be able to resist a temptation, right? One is to not have anything available to you, right? If you have nothing available to you can resist it. No, I mean like in prison, right?
Yeah. So but out here it's a totally different ball game. Yeah.
So there are 2 ways basically. One is to actually be disciplined enough to be able to have something in front of you and you could still resist it. The other way is to not ever have it in front of you. So you, as a Christian in prison, there are certain things you don't have in front of you. And so you don't need a lot of willpower to resist them because they're not there. All of a sudden, they're right in front of you, and it's a different ballgame. You actually haven't been prepared. You know what I mean? You haven't been prepared to resist it when it's in front of you. You've been not having a problem with the temptation because it's not in front of you. I mean, it's similar to like, imagine Muslims in a Muslim country where everyone wears full burqas, right? And then that Muslim goes to, let's say, New York City. That's why you have some guys who just lose their minds, right? Oh my goodness, look at all these women. They're like unwrapped meat, blah, 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 blah. It's like you haven't been around that. You've never developed the self-control to be around that. And so you can actually have a kind of self-control that hasn't been tested yet. All of a sudden it gets tested. So that's one thing. Another problem, which we've touched on a bit, is you get out and life isn't exactly easy as far as getting a job or anything else, right? I mean, think about this. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. So I have 2 bachelor's degrees, I have 2 master's degrees, and a PhD. If I went to the local 7-Eleven and applied for a job, I would not be able to get the job. They would have a line.
Check that box.
They would have a line saying, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony? If so, please explain."
Check.
And then I would have to explain what I did.
Actually, you wouldn't even be called back for an interview. The second they see yes on conviction, you're done. So, the biggest thing is I hear from a lot of people is, well, you get out of prison, go get a job. Don't be a bum, blah, 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 and stuff. I mean, fortunately in my industry, I didn't have that problem. I didn't have to worry about that. But 90%, 95% of people that get out of prison do have to worry about that. When you can't even get a job at McDonald's and stuff, and these are guys that are making thousands of dollars a day selling drugs on the street. Now, what do you think they're going to go back to? We need to do better for our, for the guys, the girls that are getting out of, especially longer bits and stuff. We don't have the proper, the proper things. And the church, I gotta say, has always been very actively involved with prison ministry and things like that. And that's
we're locked up. It was I mean, there were church services every night. It was every night.
Those people donated their time and came in.
Some of them
spent time.
Some of them were like Bible scholars who were old and they're in their 80s and they're not going around teaching, but they'll come in and hang out with the inmates and so on. And so all that stuff is awesome. But I mean, basically, and it's a situation where, like, if I went to 7-Eleven right now and I filled out an application, they turned me down. I can't blame them for turning me down, right? All they knew about me was, okay, he did this horrible, violent stuff. And okay, why in the name of common sense would you want to hire someone who's done that horrible, violent stuff? So I get that. But the problem is, what do you do with these guys who are getting out of prison and they've done messed up stuff in the past? And obviously you would rather go with someone who hasn't done that messed up stuff. But you're putting these guys in situations where, as Kane pointed out, hey, I can go around looking for something. And again, you do find jobs. You usually end up working with, hey, I know a guy who can help me work here, right? Who can get me in because he owns this place and he can get me in there and so on. But notice for a lot of people, if you don't know someone who's got you in there, it's, what are you going to do? And gosh, here's my buddy that I was selling for before, and he's saying he can hook me up again and get started, and so I can be. What do I do? Right. Yeah. And so they end up right back in the same situation. And again, it's a lot of times it's Christians, and people will end up justifying it. Say, hey, I gotta look out for my kid. I gotta take care of my kid. I can't do it any other way. So that's the justification. And then 2 years later, you end up locked up again. I want to go ahead and give something. I'm not familiar with anyone talking about this ever. Someone may have, but I'm going to go ahead and break it down because this is something I noticed, right? I got out. I didn't get back into any sort of, criminal lifestyle and so on. I got out. I jumped into school. I could have made lots of stupid choices along the way that, if things had turned turned out slightly different, I could have gotten in trouble again, especially when I was on parole. A fight, anything that would have locked me back up.
Yeah, parole and probation are like literally a living hell. Yeah. I mean, you know, they don't care. And following your point about the job, think about this and stuff. When you have to go and pee in the bottle and you live 20 miles away from the nearest testing place, you know, whatever, and you have to constantly tell your boss, oh, you know what, I've got to go to the probation. Oh, I got to go to the probation office. I got to go to the probation office. You're not going to have that job very long unless you have a very understanding boss, and there's not very many understanding bosses.
And it goes back to why would you want to deal with the ex-inmate when you could deal with someone else who doesn't have that have that problem. All right, so here's the thing. So I didn't get back into, you know, what things I was doing before, but I noticed it was massively harder to live as a faithful Christian outside of prison than it was inside of prison. Right? It was everything was more difficult, and I was trying to do everything absolutely right. I mean, as soon as I got out that first Sunday, I was in a church saying, "Hey, could you show me your statement of faith? I want to check this. Check this out."
That's where I went wrong.
Yeah. So, but even then, massively, a much more massive struggle to keep up everything, to keep up praying, to keep up Bible study, anything, right? To avoid sinning. Everything became massively more difficult. And I was wondering about that for a long time. And I was actually over at Mike Lacona's house with Gary Habermas, and he was talking about some things, and it finally clicked, right? So this is Gary Habermas. He's a Christian scholar, and he was talking about some other people like Dallas Willard and Richard Foster, who have books on the Christian disciplines. Right, the Christian disciplines. It doesn't mean like discipline like we're thinking of. It's basically the things you do as a Christian, as a disciple, right? And if you ask someone who, even in a church that emphasizes things you're supposed to do as a Christian, you'll usually get a list of like 4 or 5, and it will be things like, it will be prayer, Bible study, fellowship, witnessing, maybe fasting on occasion. But those will be the 5 things you do as a Christian.
Yeah.
And here's what people have been pointing out about the early centuries of Christianity. It was more like 12 to 15 disciplines of a Christian. And what's crazy is when you find them right in the Bible, right? Yeah. You find them right in the Bible, but they're just not emphasized nowadays. And so things that were emphasized in the early centuries of Christianity, if you were becoming a disciple of Christ, it wasn't just the prayer and Bible study and so on. Simplicity was a massive one. Namely, you're living a simple,
releasing the material things from your life.
Uncluttered lifestyle, right? You want to avoid clutter in your life, right? So simplicity. Related to that, frugality, right? Not being wasteful.
It's very easy here in America to fall into those bad habits.
Yeah, notice that's part of why it's not emphasized, because we're in America where you don't want to tell people, hey, you know, don't be, you know, hey, be frugal. It's not exactly a virtue in modern society. So simplicity, frugality, a confession and accountability, right? If you do something wrong, you confess it to your fellow Christians, and you guys remain accountable to each other.
Yes.
Submission to authority, right? Submission to authority, meaning you are under someone else, a church leader, someone you are under authority, and someone that you are in submission to authority. It actually is supposed to have an ongoing effect on you, that you understand that you're not on top. You are not answerable to no one, right?
Exactly.
So you have those kinds of things. And what they had was, it was called a rule of life, but it doesn't mean a rule as in here are the rules. It's a rule like more along the lines of a ruler, right? But the word that they used is actually the word for trellis. And it was connected to vine growing. Yeah. That if you wanted to get, if you wanted your vine to grow and produce fruit, there's this, you put a trellis up and the vine grows on the trellis, and that's how it maximizes its growth, right?
Right.
And so this rule, this structured framework, was supposed to be these daily, weekly, monthly rhythms of your life, that you have this sort of structure. There's all sorts of room for moving around within the structure, but you have this developed structure.
Yeah.
And so that's how they made sure that they had this sort of daily rhythm of, here's when I pray, here's when I do this, and so on. There's all kinds of things that can throw things off, but you get into this rhythm and so on. And what's interesting is I've also studied things about willpower and habit formation and so on. Actually makes sense from a psychological perspective. Willpower is compared to like a tank of energy that you can actually deplete and wear out. That's why you can, like I could say right now, okay, don't eat. And you can decide, okay, I'm not going to eat. Well, you could keep that up for a while using willpower. Eventually your willpower would be depleted and you would I have to eat, right? So there are things you can do for an amount of time. Eventually your willpower runs out and you end up giving in. That's why people can, like, let's say, diet and go on a diet for a while and, 12 days and, hey, I've lost, 5 pounds and so on. And then you give up.
Then they fall right off.
You give up. Mm-hmm. So, but there's also something, forming habits. You form habits in your life. And all of a sudden, once you develop a habit, in other words, once you keep up something long enough,
love rituals. Yeah, they love ritualistic, like.
Well, it actually becomes wired. It becomes. Aristotle called it second nature, right? It's second nature because you have your first nature. That's what you start with, but you can actually train yourself to do certain things so much that it becomes like it's your nature. And so the idea here is the appropriate way to live a certain way is to use your willpower short term. You use your willpower short term to develop habits, and then habits take over, and then you don't need to struggle with it as much. You don't need to use your willpower because it's become part of your life. But all of this tied together. But here's the situation. I noticed that a lot of the things that were Christian disciplines in the early centuries, especially for a monastic life, if you join like a monastery and so on, they had a lot of the Christian disciplines. They're built into prison life. Notice submission to authority. You are always under submission to the authorities, right? You're constantly.
Well, we're supposed to obey a man's law as long as it doesn't contradict God's law.
But the guards, you're constantly being required on a daily basis. Yeah. That has an effect on you. In fact, I was watching an MMA fighter years ago, and he was talking about. He was trained for years in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then a guy who did like karate was running his mouth and so on. So he said, I balled him up, and the guy, he's a black belt in karate, so he's confused, like, what happened? So he wanted to go again. So I balled him up again. And then after 4 or 5 times, he realized he just couldn't do anything against.
Found the wrong art to go against.
He couldn't do anything against jiu-jitsu. And so.
Pretty effective.
Yeah. And so he said, so finally all the guy could say, well, at least in my art, it develops personal discipline. And he's like, well, screw you. I don't care what it does. I just kick the crap out of you, right? But he said, but later on I realized, what are you talking about, man? In jiu-jitsu, I get submitted over and over and over and over again every class, right? And so that does have an effect on you. That does help you be humble. That does help you. And so anyway, notice the idea here. Something like simplicity. Christian virtue in the early centuries of Christianity, you strove to remove clutter from your life, to make your life simple so that you could devote your energy towards what's important instead of all this stuff that isn't important, right? Not emphasized in Christianity today, right? No one's saying, hey, we need to cut down on all the clutter in our lives. It's like everyone's like, let's clutter things up more and more and more, right?
And I think that's part of a lot of the deception that's going on, in some churches. I'm not saying all church at all. I'm just saying in certain, I guess, I don't know, denominations, whatever you want to call it. There's been, this kind of going with the time sort of thing, which I am for. I like a church that's alive. I prefer a church. I'm into the singing the hymns and clapping and the semi kind of wannabe rock band up there and they're singing music that's that praises God, stuff like that. I like that kind of church. As far as I was raised in one of the church. A mighty fortress is our God. You know, that kind of thing. Which absolutely, I mean, it's beautiful as ritualism and stuff like that. And I'm certainly not saying that Lutherans and Methodists and stuff like that are wrong or anything like that. It just isn't for me. You know, everybody has, and that's the reason why there's such a rich tapestry of like Bible, Bible-centric churches, and that have different approaches, because not everybody is going to respond to the same, thing. Like, for instance, like you can't stand a rock band, say, in front. So you would maybe want to go to a more traditional church or something. The beautiful thing about prison, of going to chapel, like in the prison and stuff, you have straight hardcore killers sitting next to you, and God knows who else in there, and everything else and stuff, and you're sitting there and you are laser focused on that preacher. That is the one time in prison in which you let your guard down, and it's a dangerous time, because you are concentrating on the message, you're concentrating on God, you're concentrating on your relationship with God, and you entirely let your guard down, when you do that. I mean, as I think another thing that I notice, it's so easy out here to say, oh yeah, I go to church every Sunday, I'm a Christian, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm a shoo-in, kind of thing. And the thing is, I've noticed about, like, I would call genuine Christians. I mean, people are really sold out for Christ, kind of. I mean, really, really, like, in the pocket, kind of. Have to deal, stuff with people that are like kind of lukewarm, you know what I mean? That aren't so much into it, whatever. And they're babies, they're just starting out with their faith or whatever. And you have the people who have been in the faith for such a long time that, the message, the preaching, the message and whatever that's what they're there for. They don't want any frills. They don't want any, in prison it was like, it was just very stripped down. It was very, very, and just out here, it's not, it's almost become a production. I really want to call out the one preacher down in Texas. I'm not going to.
Calling out everyone, man. We're talking about simplicity here.
I know.
It's basically, you're in prison. So just think about the disciplines, right? So simplicity. Very simple lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
You get woken up.
You have nothing, basically.
You have to stand up. You have to stand up. You have to be counted. You make your bed. Then you have your little job that you have to go to, or your trade that you're learning, and so on. Then be back at your bed, and then you can go work out or something like that if you want. And then you have to be back at your bed, and so. But notice you have a rule of life, right? You have this daily rhythm.
You have structure.
It's imposed
discipline.
on you. Very structured. And so you have this over and over again. Everything becomes a rhythm for years until it's completely stripped away from you. You no longer have that, right? You already see the problem. Simplicity. Your life is very uncluttered. You have your bunk. You have one footlocker that contains all your possessions. All your possessions are right there, easily contained in a footlocker, and everything that you're supposed to do is laid out for you. It can be complicated in certain ways. Like, again, you are around a bunch of criminals and so on. You have things to do, but as far as like clutter in your life, it's just not there. Frugality, right? Not being wasteful and so on. You don't have to worry about that. You make like $30 a month from your little prison job and so on. Accountability.
Yeah.
Accountability. You're around Christians constantly. Imagine 10 people from your church living in the same room with you all day. You're around them all day. There's endless accountability.
It will make a huge change in your belief system. I mean, it really gives you that support, that camaraderie, that I'm going to help you through this, brother. I'm going to help you through this, sister. I'm going to help you through this, brother. That kind of thing. It's about being about God's work. Unfortunately, out here, it's something I think a lot of prisoners get out, and when they get back to the rat race, to get back to the working, and stuff, to get back, if they can find a job, and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's a heck of a thing getting out. You have absolutely nothing. You start off brand new at 30 or something, I mean, it's a 6-year-old had more than what I had when I got out. I mean, and I had to, you know, get right to work and and stuff and take care of things. There's still things that were outstanding. Before I got locked up the second time that I had to take care of. School loans. I mean, things like that. I mean, just the silly stuff that you don't have to deal with in prison. And I don't mean to say silly stuff, but I mean like the little petty stuff that eats you away every day out here. You don't have that in prison. Prison is brutally simple. I think it's the best way to put it. It's like a savage garden, It's just, I mean, you have so many different kinds of personalities and people thrown in together. And even in the church, you have that, which kind of makes things interesting every once in a while, But the main point is that you go from such a simple existence to such a complicated, and I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking when I say complicated, well, how complicated can your life be? And trust me, it can get very complicated, very quickly.
It's massive. I mean, again, so we're talking about the Christian disciplines. One, in prison, it's imposed on you, a rule of life. Simplicity is imposed on you. It just becomes part of your life. Frugality becomes part of your life. Submission to authority becomes part of your life. Accountability becomes part of your life. Especially if you're a Christian, you're around other Christians all the time. All of these disciplines, which were associated with a monastic life. I mean, it was part of ordinary Christianity, but basically joining like a monastery or something like that. You take all these things to the next level, and that sort of next level is what happens to you in prison. And of course, you've converted to Christianity, and then you have all of the disciplines of a Christian, not just the ones we remember, like prayer and Bible study and so on, which now you have time to do, and you're around other Christians who are holding each other accountable for going to church, for studying the Bible, for praying, and so on. Now you're part of this. This just becomes your way of life now, and this becomes your way of life for years, and you're not exposed to temptations that might draw you away from that. And so it's very natural to grow as a Christian in that environment. And then all at once, on one day, all of that is gone, right? Your rule of life is gone. That you've been, your entire existence as a Christian has been built around this daily rhythm. Now that's gone. Simplicity gone. In fact, now instead of your life being simple, thanks to the government, they make your life as complicated as possible, because while you're trying to figure out what to do with your family and jobs and everything, it's no, you have to go do this and you have to go get tested for this. No, I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. I'm just saying think about what this does to you.
Just imagine doing that just for a week. Now imagine doing it for 5 years, living under those conditions. I mean, it will drive you insane.
Yeah, and so now your life becomes progressively more cluttered, and it's just ongoing, right? I mean, the day you get out, there's not a lot of clutter. Day 5, day 5, it just keeps getting more and more cluttered.
Yeah, each time you try to solve one problem, 3 other problems crop up, then 6 problems crop at 12. You keep going up, and next thing you know, you're so tangled up and lost that you kind of give up, and you say, you know what? When I used to do this, it used to kind of make me be able to get through this, or to cope with this, and unfortunately and stuff, a lot of our coping mechanisms and stuff, are skewed after being in an incarcerated situation. You don't walk out the same person as you were when you came in. You can either walk out the right way or you can walk out the wrong way,
and so simplicity goes out the window. Rule of life goes out the window. Accountability, probably most importantly, gone. Right?
I had no accountability whatsoever.
Yeah, all of the Christians that you've been around for years and are your accountability partners, they're all gone. Now what do you have? You have your old friends.
Well, Dave and I, that's all we did. We had
nightly prayer. We had nightly prayer meetings right beside our book.
Yeah,
right?
I remember all the guys. We would have a big circle. It got so big. Remember, we
would go around the circle. We would all join hands. Bunch of inmates. We would all join hands. 8, 12, 15 of us, and we would go around the circle. We'd go around the circle
Give
with our
glory
heads
to
bowed,
God and pray, prayer requests, things like that.
praying.
I mean,
and all of a sudden,
I miss that,
all of a
that
sudden
environment.
It's gone.
You know,
it's just gone, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my theory, right? So the idea, once again, going back to what we said at the beginning,
I'm kind of 100% with you on that.
the idea is there's this perspective. Oh, this guy became a Christian when he was locked up, and then he got out and he turned away from it, or maybe not fully turned away from it, but he went back to doing a lot of the same things. Well, his entire life and what he learned about being a Christian was centered around certain features that are imposed on him as part of a Christian life in prison. And all of a sudden he gets out, it's all stripped away, and he has no experience of living as a Christian without any of that, any of those other things, any of that structure, any of that accountability, and so on. And
the lack of accountability, I think, is probably number one on that list. Yeah, because all of a sudden, you know, it feels like, oh, wow, I got nobody looking over my shoulder. You know, and that's always been my biggest problem was obedience.
Just imagine, I mean, if you were doing something, or I was doing something in prison, I mean, unless it's completely, you know, things you could get away with. Like if you looked at a nudie picture or something like that, you looked at pornography, I would know about it. If you did anything major, I would find out about it. If I did anything major, you would find out about it.
People would go and snitch to Dave about stuff that I did, and people would come to me. It was so funny because most of them were non-Christians. They could not wait to go.
They wanted to jump. That's the thing. You have all these other people who hate you because you're a Christian, and they want to do
everything they can to trip you.
He was being mean to me. What can you tell him not to be mean to me? And so
didn't Jay come to you one time about change, blah blah blah? I think it's there were some people that were very, very resentful of my conversion, you know, to Christianity. I mean, to the point where, you know, I mean, it got kind of ridiculous there for a little bit, you know. I mean, just because my old friends just would not accept that, you know, they refused to accept that. And, you know, I mean, and ending up going back, you know, was absolutely humiliating. I mean, now I was in the federal system, not the states. So, you know, I didn't run into the same people so much, but you know, it's still, you know, I had to know that. I had to live with that. And knowing that I had let my Savior down was the absolute worst thing. And let me tell you, that the dark depression that comes over you when you realize that you have not followed through on your word with God, you know, stuff, it's devastating. And, you know, it can lead to some very, very dark times because it leaves you wide open to attack, you know.
Yeah, so I guess it can be kind of parallel to, you can have a Christian who grows up in a really good Christian family, right? Really good Christian family, good Christian brothers and sisters, good Christian parents, and so on. And all of a sudden, that kid goes away to college in a completely different state and loses all of that framework, and then, you know, the Christian sometimes goes just buck wild because he's lost all of it.
My daughter's about to leave for college, man. In a month now.
Better do some groundwork. So anyway, that's sort of the situation. So really, everything we talked about, and we'll go ahead and close out here in a second. You put all of it together. That people learn to, if you become a Christian in prison, you learn to be a Christian within a certain framework, which again is very similar to what was being emphasized in the early church, and especially as part of a monastic lifestyle. Of course, you grow very rapidly as a Christian, but then everything that is that whole rule of life, again, remember, this means the trellis, right? They talked about it as a trellis that the vine would grow upon to produce fruit, right? That entire trellis, I mean, just imagine a vine growing on a trellis, and then you just completely rip out the trellis and the vine flops on the ground. Not gonna do as well, right? That's what getting out of prison is like. And then on top of that, so apart from losing all of the rule of life that has helped you in your Christian walk, now all of a sudden, in addition to that, you have all of these temptations right in front of your face. And in addition to that, you have problems with basic things like getting a job and so on. And you didn't have to worry about that before. All of a sudden, you have all these new concerns cluttering up your life, all these temptations, all this this urge to go back to whatever it was you did before, and you're just struggling.
Sometimes find yourself almost wishing you were back in prison.
I
sometimes wonder if subconsciously, if I didn't deliberately almost put myself in a situation. I was so miserable in my marriage, especially after being cheated on and lied to and everything else, and by my best friend too. So that was a wonderful thing. Yep. Again, not excuses for my behavior. I think it's important. It's part of the story, and stuff. I mean, you kind of give a full picture of what I was going through at that point, I was in constant state of exhaustion. I was taking one drug to give me enough energy to work, and I was taking another drug to, be able to sleep. I was taking another drug to, and I'm talking about even drugs that were prescribed to me. Most of the time during this period, I wasn't involved in illegal drugs. Doctors were prescribing these things to me, like, painkillers and things like that. I actually cold turkeyed myself off of that stuff, and then still ended up in prison, and stuff in the end. Stuff and all, because I think it was a direct answer to a prayer. I think that I needed more time, to dig deep down inside, and really realize, that I need to keep my eye on the prize. Yeah. That I can't just run a mile and say, hey, I just ran a marathon, I'm good, you gotta, what was it, Paul, I think, that said, you have to run the race to the end, and that's, that's kind of where I sometimes feel that shame. I think that the evil one often puts that shame in us and stuff, is constantly trying to, make us feel that we did something offensive to God, or whatever. I mean, sometimes we did, and he's like our accuser, he constantly throwing it in our face, constantly, in your head, have I done something, what have I done to offend God? What have I, you ask questions like that when you end up in impossible situations, especially prison. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to close out here. You've had our thoughts on why people who become Christian in prison end up getting locked back up. Hope you have some clarity on that. There were some more requests.
Okay.
To talk about, because we had mentioned some demonic stuff, right?
All right, guys. Yeah, I do. I think that you will find tomorrow's talk to be quite illuminating.
You guys want some stories tomorrow? Kane's basically here for tomorrow as well. You guys want some stories talking about some demonic encounter? You have way more stories. My stories are more secondhand. Like Goob, I talked to Goob, told me when he would be in his more friendly moods. He told me about an exorcism, him being exorcised of demons. It's actually funny.
Remember how laid hands on him?
He was telling me, this was back when he was on the street, and he was for Satanism, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and he thought it was fun to go into churches and mess with people to slowly lead them astray, pretending to be, a Christian and so on. And he said he walked into the wrong place one time with someone who invited him to church. He said he walked in there, and the person who was leading the Bible study goes, the Lord is telling me that there are some demons present. He was like, all of a sudden he got panicked, right? Like, whoa,
look at the time. Yeah.
So then he told me they did an exorcism on him right there.
Wow.
And he described
it. They delivered him literally.
I have stories like that of what, but you've seen people levitating and stuff. So guys, if you want to hear about some of that stuff,
I have some humdingers of some stories. I mean, direct.
I remember several that you did not mention at all yesterday. So, guys, if you want to talk about that, let us know. And again, Kane will be here tomorrow as well, so we can go ahead and talk about that.
And you guys have been awesome. I went through all the comments and stuff. I tried to like everything I could, and answer people and stuff. And I really appreciate you guys being so welcoming. To Dave's channel.
Have you seen the trolls?
You know what? Yeah. I mean, if people are coming here to troll, I think really they're kind of coming here to get maybe a little dose of truth too. Yeah. Yeah, so you know what? Troll away, guys. Troll away. If you want to troll,
let trolls troll.
What? We can block you.
Haters hate, trolls troll. A couple quick comments. BD Update said, I am the one who gave reference from Leviticus Now can you tell me, did Jesus allow tattoo? How you are allowing? No.
Show me where he doesn't allow.
Yeah, BD updates. And I'm saying this, keep in mind, tattoos are not the issue for why we brought this up. It's a methodology. It's a methodology. Notice, you don't like tattoos. And this is the methodology. It could be anything, right? You don't like tattoos, so you come up with some arguments against it. Your argument is bad, right? Did Jesus allow tattoo? Well, Jesus didn't say one word about tattoo. So how would you know? Did Jesus allow you to post comments on YouTube? Yeah. Never addressed it. Never said one word about you posting comments on YouTube. So all you could say is, well, Jesus, because he is in nature God, before the incarnation, he revealed the Old Testament and he revealed Leviticus. So therefore, that's Jesus revealing that. Well, he's revealing that for the children of Israel to set them apart. And if you're going to say, well, that's Jesus doing that, and it doesn't, even though it repeatedly says these are the rules for the children of Israel. If you want to say you have to follow those, be consistent, and you should be complaining about me cutting my hair. You should be complaining that I trim my beard. You should be complaining about all of those things. Why aren't you complaining about those things? You're not complaining about those things because you have you like those. You're fine with those, right? So that's my point. Is a flawed, horrible methodology to say what are things that I don't like. Let me come up with some absurd argument to justify it. With that said, if someone can make a good argument against tattoos, I'm fine with that. It's just normally when someone makes an argument, it's like this, and it's just terrible. So that's one response. And then Appy Frenzy, for some reason, kept posting, David Wood, please answer my question. Is it wrong to sing and dance in church? I have no idea why you'd be asking me as if I'm an authority on what's allowed in church.
Do a little bit of reading in Psalms and stuff. I think that you'll find your answer.
Well, that's what the person said. I mean, not that type of dancing. I guess grinding and so on. I mean the way.
Well, yeah, you're
David
not twerking in church. I mean, come on, guys. Let's use some common sense.
So here's the thing. I have no idea why that came up. Why Appy Frenzy won. I'm not an authority on what you're supposed to do in church. I would say if you're in a church that has singing and dancing, I've been in churches that have singing and dancing. As long as it doesn't become chaotic and a distraction to other people. Yeah, but why in the people? I mean, but why in the world are you even asking me that? So that's notice here with the objection to tattoos. The point wasn't tattoos. I was happy to address it because of the methodology. And here it's not the dancing issue. It's the bringing up all these random issues where I'm not an authority. Why are you bringing it up? And it's not the topic. It's not even the topic. So anyways, just some ideas. Anyway, looks like tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we will be we'll be talking about demons.
The Terminators will be back.
We'll be talking about demons and weird, creepy stuff.
And don't forget Prison Mike. I'll be here.
We got to get some purple bandanas by tomorrow so we can be Prison Mike. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Not Randy. Kane.
Not Randy.
Yeah, have a good night.
Not Randy. All right, catch y'all tomorrow.
Peace.